Hello, my name is Coding User, and in this video I'll be talking about types and variables. So let's get started. First, I recommend you making a folder for your projects. I'll call it projects, but you can call it anything else. It's just a way of separating your projects from your actual other folders. In here, I'll make this current project, which is going to be called tutorial 1. There's this cool trick I found that you can with that this directory you can, if you type cmd on it, then it opens the command prompt, and then you can type code dot, it opens Visual Studio Code. Now once you're in here, you make a new file like with this icon and call it index.js. Index.js is a common like thing that you're gonna be running. So this is what you'd usually call it, or main.js, or I don't know. But once you're in here, type like there's different types. Like to declare a variable, we use something called let. And then we put the name, and then we put the value. So let variable equal text, for example, which is called a string. By the way, this is called a string. It even says it's called a string. Now, there's others like numbers. Like, let's set equal to 12. There's also booleans. I'll explain them all later. There's also big int. As I said, these are a bit complicated, but I'll explain them later. There's also undefined, which you probably won't put in a variable, but unless you don't declare, which I'll come to later. And there's also null. So let's say let null val equal null. As I said, there's also undefined, but I'm not mentioning it due to it usually not being used unless you don't declare, unless you don't put a value. Which, if you don't put a value, it would look like this, like variable without value, like this. You just declare it, then you can put a value later. This would be undefined because literally it could be anything. Null is like you explicitly telling the computer that's literally nothing. Big ints are like the a bigger number than usual. I mean, I think it could even be one, but yeah, if you add an n at the end, it declares that it's a big. You would usually want to make it really large. You would probably use number for smaller values, but yeah, booleans are either true or false. So there's like that's all the states that there are. There's also number variables, well, number types, I mean, and then it's like any number, and then if you got really high, then you'd use this. And then a string is just text, like you can say anything, text. You use quotations around it to say it's a string. Now you can also use apostrophes, but you usually want to use the quotations. Now, these are the primitive types, so they're like basically the most basic blocks of JavaScript. They can be used a lot, but they're the basic ones. Now let's go into non-primitive types. So here, let's say let object equal. There's something called an object. It's like a way of storing like values inside of something that like can store all of them with labels. It stores them with labels. So it's like this, but without declaring it, like without this and without this. Instead of this, there's colon. So here inside the object would just say variable, and then we can set it to anything, because it's not the same variable because it's inside the object. It's a property of the object. But this is like a declared value, like it's in the scope that it was declared, and I'll come to scope later. Now, number, you can also store number. You can store any type. You just need to remember that, like, you put the label, then the colon, and then the value, and then if there's another value beneath it, then you put a comma, and you repeat. To access object values, you use object, either dot to access the property itself, or you can use square brackets. So here you get this same value out of it. But if you had like properties that had labels that were like that had spaces in them, then you would need to use this. Because if you have like this, then you would first of all need to put like a string as the label, but like because JavaScript already translates this into string, but that's why you'd need to use this, because you can't really access it with the dot, but with this you can. Now you can access any property inside the object, so we can access object dot number. Now if we open terminal, in the last video it was control apostrophe to open terminal, and then we do node dot. This just runs the index of the current directory. If you had a main, for example, then you do node main or node main.js. You could also do node index or node index.js, but the simpler one would just be node dot. It wouldn't say anything because I forgot to console.log. Console.log is just basically a thing that puts things in console or terminal. So if we do console.log and then we put the value inside of it, it just does it into the console. So here it says number. Now, as I said, you can't access this because it automatically does that. Now, that's if we run this, then it literally has nothing. So if we type text, then it has something. Now, there's also another one called arrays. There's another type called arrays. So it's like basically like an object but without labels. So it would be like if you had lots of data, you'd store it in arrays. You wouldn't really store it in objects because you need to label each, and that would be a bit it wouldn't really be that good. Like it even says number array here. That's the type, number array. There's also different arrays. There's arrays of arrays even. There's array of objects, like here. Here. There's also string array. There's also you can, because JavaScript is so versatile, you can literally just say it's like two types in one. And to access values inside arrays, let's just type some values. Use array and then from 0 to the end, basically. So 0 and then 1 and then 2, because this is 0, the first value is 0, then the second is 1, and then it goes like that. You can't really access higher numbers. Like if we were to access this, for example, it wouldn't, if we do console.log log, and then we type in this, it wouldn't say undefined. This is a value that we hear. It's undefined. So to access a real value, you'd probably use array1. It would get the value. also other types which are not made by JavaScript, like that are not official. Like you can make something I forgot to mention. You can actually access uh, arrays and for loops, which I'll come into another video, are very useful. Um, but now back to what I was talking about. You can make different types with other like more complex things, but which are called classes, which I'll get onto into another video. But like there is other types, but I don't really want to go into this because it's a bit more complicated. Um, Thank you for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe.